Let's be real for a moment. Death freaks a lot of us out. We may not talk about it over breakfast, but it's one of those things that lurks in the back of our minds, especially when we get older. Like a browser tab that's always open. Sometimes we try to sugarcoat it. We say people have passed on, like they've just gone on a trip, or we imagine them looking down on us like some cosmic version of CCTV. Dad's up there watching over me, someone might say. Grandma's my guardian angel. And it's comforting. It softens the blow, doesn't it? But deep down, many of us wonder, is that just wishful thinking? Because truth be told, we can't know for sure what happens after death. There is no smoking gun, universally accepted proof that we continue to exist in some form. There are even people who straight up say, when you're dead, you're dead. End of story. They think consciousness just switches off like a light bulb. No more thoughts for them, no dreams, just nothing. Still, that question nags at us. Do we perish or do we somehow survive? You are probably wondering, can you really live outside of time and space? Now here's where things get interesting. There's actually research out there, yes, real scientific stuff. It suggests that the human mind might not be as tightly bound to the physical world as we once thought. Some studies hint that our consciousness might not be fully tied to our brain, like it could possibly operate outside of time and space. No, this isn't science fiction. There are academics like Harvey Irwin and Caroline Watt who have looked into many research papers on so-called anomalous phenomena. They've looked at research studies on telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition. Evidence that suggests the mind can access information beyond what our senses and logic would normally allow. Still sceptical? That's fair, but let's take a different angle. Even in our day-to-day lives, isn't it kind of obvious that not everything about us is physical? We dream, we think, we feel. Those aren't things you can pop under a microscope. You can measure brainwaves, sure. You can measure electrical activity in the brain, but no scientist can see your actual thoughts or emotions. Your inner experience, your awareness, your consciousness, it is private. It is invisible and unique to you. So, if part of us already exists beyond the physical world, why is it so hard to imagine that something of us could continue after death? Let's talk about something else that science struggles to pin down. Something called our intentions. I mean, rocks don't have desires, do they? Biological cells don't want to go on holiday, but you do. You've got intentions, you've got goals. Maybe it's finishing that novel, or raising your kids well, or just making a tasty lasagna. Whatever it is, these intentions help define who you are. They are you. And honestly, doesn't it feel like it would be such a waste for all of that? Your desires, your love, your learning, your personal growth, all of that to just vanish the moment you die? It would be tragic. It would be horrible if everything we've ever experienced and strived for just disappeared like we were never here. It's not just you or me wondering about consciousness. When you think of it, this question about human destiny has been a fundamental question across all cultures. You've asked, I've asked, Every thinking person has asked, where am I headed after I die? For thousands of years, people across the globe have tried to make sense of what comes next. You're probably aware that Christians talk of heaven. They talk of eternal life for those who believe in God and live a good life. Muslims also teach about an afterlife, a paradise for the faithful, they say, and hell for the wicked. Hindus see death as a transition, not an end. The soul gets reborn in a new body, in their way of thinking. Some Buddhists, particularly in Dzogchen teachings, believe you can transform your physical body into a rainbow body, a kind of light form that continues beyond death. In Taoism, some teachings say that if you live simply and purely, your soul can ascend into spiritual realms beyond the physical. And indigenous cultures, like the native North Americans, like the Australian Aboriginals, and the ancient Egyptians, all had strong beliefs in an afterlife and a spirit world. In other words, the idea that something survives death isn't fringe thinking, it's pretty much a universal human intuition. Let's say we do survive death. Then what? Do we wake up like we're just coming out of a weird dream? Do we still feel like ourselves? Do we remember who we were? Can we see our loved ones again? Can we move, think, feel? These are huge questions. Now, if you come from a Christian background, you may wonder about physical resurrection. Now, Swedenborg said, it is a mistake to believe that the afterlife is a place where one will live in a physical body, resurrected from this life on earth. Although the churches widely teach this, no geographer or astronomer has ever located a paradise or a heaven or a hell up there in the sky. Christians apparently accept there is a real evil force influencing us, but the topic of hell for them has become embarrassing. They rightly ask, how could those who worship a loving Father believe in eternal damnation by a punitive deity? Good question. And the figure of Satan is often seen as superstitious nonsense. While there's no unanimous answer to what happens after death, one person's account does stand out. That is of a 18th century mystic and spiritual philosopher called Emanuel Swedenborg. Now, he did not die and come back and tell us all about it. He did not have a near-death experience as such. But for 28 years, he claimed he was able to mystically access a different realm on a daily basis. Now, this realm he called the spiritual world. He described that level of consciousness in great detail. In his view, when we die, we wake up in a spirit body. It feels physical, but it isn't made of the same stuff as our earthly body. This spirit body can see, hear, smell, think and feel, maybe even more vividly than we do now. The world we enter won't be part of our physical universe. It is a different dimension, governed not by physics, but by psychology, by our inner state. According to Swedenborg, and echoed by other spiritual sources and mediums, our mental state after death shapes our apparent surroundings. And if you are the type of person who seeks kindness, who seeks love and beauty, that's going to be what you'll experience all around you. But if you're drawn to cruelty, selfishness, or perhaps negativity, then your environment will reflect that too. Now, many Christians no longer talk of hell per se. Nevertheless, people in general often do use the words heaven and hell. We say things, don't we, like, I'm in heaven, meaning a feeling of peace and contentment. A hellish state of mind is when our inner demons are troubling us. We also speak of a terrible situation as hell on earth and a living hell. When catastrophic things happen, the phrase, all hell is breaking loose, comes to mind. In other words, in using the term hell, people are referring to a state of mind rather than an external place. So imagine heaven not as some cloud palace in the sky, but as a state of deep inner peace and joy. And hell? That might be more like being trapped in your own bitterness, unable to escape the life you created. According to Swedenborg, selfish people don't get punished because of their bad lives on earth. Their hellish state is more the result of spiritual gravity. You just naturally gravitate to where your inner self feels at home. And here's another idea. He claims that in the afterlife, time and space work differently. Now, in our world, we measure time with clocks and calendars. But think about how time feels. When you are bored, time drags. When you're doing something you love, it flies. That is subjective time. According to Swedenborg, that's exactly what time is like in the spirit world. It depends on your mental state. Same with space. In our reality, how far away someone is depends on physical distance. But according to Swedenborg, in the spirit world, closeness is emotional. If you feel connected to someone, you will actually be near them. If you don't, you won't be. It's kind of sensible, really. Now, I'm guessing, are you wondering, is there support for these ideas? Actually, yes. Swedenborg was not alone. Many mediums, people who claim to receive messages from the deceased, they report similar things. One respected researcher, Professor David Fontana, studied this extensively and wrote a book called Is There an Afterlife? He found that people supposedly communicating from the afterlife say similar things over and over. They say things like that the next world reflects your thoughts, that we gravitate towards people who think and feel like we do, and that the spirit world is more vivid than the physical ones. Skeptical? Well, that's understandable. After all, some mediums have been caught faking it, and science tends to be extremely cautious about this stuff. But when so many independent sources describe similar afterlife experiences, it's hard to completely ignore. So, will the next life be happy? Well, that depends. Now, if Swedenborg and others are right, the afterlife is not a reward for how you've behaved on earth, and nor is it a punishment. Like how being kind makes your life richer now, it seems to carry over. It's more like a natural continuation of who you are. If you have cultivated love or wisdom and a genuine desire to do good, not just to look good, you will find yourself in a place that mirrors that. Not a place, a physical place, but a spirit place, a spiritual realm. And Swedenborg called the joyful part of that spirit world heaven. And apparently it's beautiful. There are gardens, rich rivers, even towns. And people fall in love. They build lives. They grow. kind of like Earth could be if we just chilled out and cared more. He did not see heaven as a reward. Instead, he thought of it as a natural social environment for people who have been developing inner goodness. It's not about how many good deeds you've racked up, but whether you wanted to do good because it felt right to your soul. So where does all this leave us then? If you're someone who's unsure about what happens after death, then you're not alone. It's okay not to have all the answers. Keep asking, keep wondering. Just don't feel like you need to settle for nothingness if that idea doesn't sit right with you. Maybe, just maybe, consciousness doesn't flicker out. Maybe it continues, transformed but still with you. If so many people, from ancient tribes to modern scientists, have been catching glimpses of something beyond, if they are not mistaken, then your thoughts, your desires, your growth, what you love, they're not wasted. They're part of something much bigger than this single life. And maybe that's the big point. You are more than you think you are, more than just skin, bones and brainwaves, more than a fleeting spark in an indifferent universe. You're a conscious being. And that awareness, that consciousness, mysterious, rich and deeply human, might just have a future beyond the grave. Thank you so much for listening to me.